Hello everyone! Welcome to the first Nebula's Overwatch 2 hero concept video. So I have got an Excel document that I'm currently going to be reading off of, and it's going to be showing the abilities. I will show a screenshot of it, where each ability as it's appropriate in the video. Yep, so the first thing I thought I'd start on is a DPS character. So I wanted to make a DPS character, and I decided that, well, what does Overwatch lack in? And my personal opinion is it's lacking in Omnics. Now, I honestly feel like there's not many Omnics in Overwatch 2, despite Omnics being kind of one of the biggest drive-in plot points of Overwatch as a story and franchise. The only Omnics I can see are Ramatra and Zenyatta. Now, there are a few other robots on the team, but other than that, I can't see too much. So, Genji is a human. I don't think he counts as an Omnic. I'm pretty... even on... if you get up the Blackwatch Genji skin, you can see his body is at least largely still in... well, not largely, but at least enough intact that he's bothered keeping, you know, some of it. But I'm pretty sure he doesn't count. Now, Echo is a difficult one. I'm not really up to date in Overwatch lore, so I don't know if she's an Omnic or not, but I don't think she is, and I guess for the purpose of this we'll count her, because that's still only 3 members of the cast. And before anyone goes ahead and says, oh, Bastion's an Omnic, I don't think Bastion's an Omnic. If we look at Bastion, I don't think he is an Omnic. I think he is a robot built by the Omnics to fight in war. He's not supposed to have a personality, he's a war machine. Now, of course, this Bastion has somehow got a personality, I don't actually know how or why, but I don't believe that this is an Omnic. Now, even if we did class Bastion and Echo, which are the most generous ones I think you could give, classing Orisa as an Omnic, I disagree. I don't think she's an Omnic. She's another robot. I think that there is a distinction between Omnics and robots. I believe that Ramatra and Zenyatta are the only 2 Omnics, and I'm willing to accept Echo potentially, but I don't think she is. I think she's a, you know, a personality AI. She's definitely a robot, don't get me wrong, but I don't think she's an Omnic. And I think that Orisa and Bastion are both robots that were built by the Omnics during the Omnic Crisis. When I was doing the Invasion cinematics, or not cinematics, PvE missions, which are a bit naff to be honest with you, they're fine, but they're a little bit low, you know, low quality, they feel rushed. I'm pretty sure a quote is that no actual Omnics are spotted fighting for Null Sector. They're just robots that have been built by Null Sector. So I do believe that that's actually true. They don't have Omnics on the front lines fighting with them. All of those robots are just robots. I'm trying to find... that's it, there we go. My Bastion skin. So I figured we haven't seen much of Null Sector, have we? So I've created 3 characters, a tank, a DPS, and a support for Null Sector, at least in concept, and I'm going to be pitching them to you guys today. Well, not all of them. We're going to start with just the DPS, and so I started this video on Genji, and this was no accident, because when I first started thinking about what does a DPS design need, and as far as I could tell, if you look at most of the DPS cast, they aren't very diverse in what they do. Ashe, generally speaking, just does damage. She has a tiny bit of knockback crowd control, and Bob obviously is good for, you know, a pseudo-tank moment. But largely speaking, she's a damage dealer. Bastion, largely speaking, is just a slow, big target, so he gets some extra health, but he, roughly speaking, just does damage. And obviously, most of the characters in Overwatch, as DPS characters, just deal damage, and, you know, a few of them have additional utility. Soldier having his heal pack, Sombra having the ability to hack, Teleporter on Sim, and they do tend to have a bit of utility, but it does seem to me that the majority of the focus of these characters is to do damage with small amounts of either healing, defense, or crowd control on the side. So, I figured that when it comes to designing a DPS character, the core thing is to have unique playstyle. All of the DPS are incredibly unique. None of them really feel anything like each other. I genuinely can't look at this lot and see similarities. The closest I can think of would be maybe Reaper and Tor, because they both have higher levels of health and shotguns, kind of, but even then I think we're stretching it. Let's try and find maybe another one. I've heard Echo and Farah compared because they can both fly, but other than that singular similarity, they don't even fly in a similar capacity. So I really, really don't think that that's correct. You could say that Soldier and Bastion both have roughly assault rifles, but I just think Bastion's feels so different to Soldier's. Not to mention Soldier plays so much quicker, has healing. I mean, come on. Widow and Ash is one I've heard before, but I think that that's just because they both have sniper rifle issues. So yeah, I think, as you can see, all of these guys are incredibly different, and that's I don't think that's by accident. And it's because when you're playing DPS, you are focusing on the core damage mechanics. And so because you are focusing on those, you want to make sure that each character is different. Tanks are focusing on utility and positioning, and so they can get away with a little bit more overlap when it comes down to what they do. It's much more common for two tanks to be similar than two DPS to be similar. You could even put up like Sigma and Ramatra. They both have the same looking barrier, and they both have a pseudo sort of block ability which works in similar ways, although of course they are clearly different. I'm not trying to claim that Ramatra and Sigma are similar. Obviously a better example would be Roadhog and Junker Queen, who both have shotguns, both have pulls, and both have self-healing. You know, that's quite a similarity between the two, but you know, and in supports, again, you get similarities, and that's because when it comes to support, you're more talking about what function they've got. I believe that Lucio and Juno were clearly made of the same thoughts. I think Juno isn't that great. I've watched some videos on it, and I've played her quite a little bit since she came out. She feels a little bit weak, but I think that might be also, though, just down to people getting used to her. Because ultimately, as I've played her more, I've started to feel like I can play her much better than I did when I started. But it's sort of a struggle to see exactly what she does bring. I feel like she dies super easily is how I feel, and Lucio doesn't die very easily. And if you're competing with Lucio, which is I think the point of Juno, you need to be either more survivable or have something really big in the bag, like a big ultimate. And I do think Juno's ultimate's a little bit weak. I think if I was Blizzard, what I would do, I know this is a mild distraction, but I would change Juno so that she can move her ultimate. She controls where it moves. It can't move quickly, she can't just teleport it around, but she can like point it in the direction and then it goes that way, or stop it on tap, because it feels like it just wanders away from your group, and it's like, well, I don't want to push through the chokehold now. It's like if you're defending, I know this is a mod, if we're defending like here, and I ult, well, I guess I could literally go get my ult, unless I do that. And I pop my ult here, my team is now, oh, well, there goes our ult. No, we, as the defenders, would now have to push through. It just seems a bit odd. But anyway, I've been distracted. So, all of that goes to say that I think that when it comes to melee characters, you want unique playstyle and very unique shooting mechanics, because that's what a lot of people want. They want, you know, the mechanics of actually attacking stuff. And so I figured there's no melee DPS characters. And so I thought, let's do that. Now, unfortunately, I ended up bailing on the melee character side of it because I ended up coming up with something better. I figured, why would you want to be a melee character? No one would actually want it to be melee. There's no reason for a character to be melee if they could be ranged. right? Like, ranged is just better than melee. You only make Reinhardt use a hammer because it's supposed to be a disadvantage. It's not a big disadvantage, but the idea being that it's, you know, he can't, you know, we're giving him a weakness, just stay away from him. So, I present to you my latest DPS concept. Let me know what you think. Slicer. Now, Slicer is literally named after the little slicers in the Omnic Crisis missions, or whatever those invasion things are. But you can name her whatever you want. So I'm going to give us a little background lore because I did bother coming up with it. I did find it quite interesting. So, Slicer, you can give her a real name. I struggle to actually give these characters actual names because the Omnics don't tend to have unique names. I didn't want to call her, like, I don't know, Fiata or something, or, you know, because, or, something that, because Ramatra and Zenyatta both have names, but they're clearly from, you know, a monastery. The only other Omnics I've seen are called Claire and Reggie, so I didn't want to, like, call it, oh yeah, this is Dan, or this is, you know, Kate. You know, you wanted something a little bit more. But yeah, anyway, so her name is Slicer. So let's get into her background lore. You should see some art up on the screen right now that I'm going to have drawn for her, because I am actually decided to put a little bit of effort into it. It's not going to look fantastic, but it's just the basic concept. A very basic concept, what I call a scrap drawing. But essentially, she was an Omnic that wanted to live alongside humans originally. She wanted to share the world, and after the Omnic crisis ended, she realized that humanity, you know, didn't really respect her, didn't really see her as an equal, and in sort of like a gang fight, she had her arms torn off from her limbs, and she was left to die by the people who did this. No real, you know, you could just say whoever you want it to be. It could be, I don't know, the gangs in Dorado or something like that. I don't know. Just people who are, you know, not happy with Omnics in general. And Ramatra, leader of the sort of Null sector resistance, finds her and gives her a home. She trains to fight against humans and joins Null sector, with both of her arms now being replaced by curved energy blades. So yeah, that's her general lore. She's resentful of humans as a whole, and she's going to be a villain, I suppose, in Null sector, but one that you can kind of see where she's coming from. If people were constantly, you know, being essentially racist to you and ripping your arms off, you know, for your entire existence, you're not going to be happy about it, and you can see why she would join Null sector and why she would try to, you know, end humanity, per se, or take them off their pedestal. Now, in terms of her role, she is going to be a stealth operator. She is going to be used by Ramatra for stealth missions. She isn't going to be on the main front line, and she is a secret that he is hiding close to his chest, because she is very skilled at what she does, infiltration and assassination. So, let's start with her stats. She's going to have 175 health and 50 shields, so a total of 225, but 50 of those are going to be shields. I feel like, you know, Omnics should have shields, and I think shields suit her playstyle because she is very much about disengaging when the moment is right. So, let's start with her primary fire. Her primary fire is called Laserblade. I've not really come up with an imaginative name there. I'm sure anyone could call it, like, I don't know, Energy Wave or Energy Blades, whatever you want. Essentially, you slice an energy blade through the air, and it will send a thin wave of energy which deals damage on impact. This is not going to, how do I say, it's not going to cleave. It can only hit one person, and when it hits that person, it will do its damage. The way that I would describe this is, think of Fire Strike. Fire Strike is a projectile. Imagine it, but instead of it being vertical, it's horizontal, and think of it as a very thin line. And that is the basic attack. So every time she swings her swords, she will send out an energy line, which at the moment is 1 meter in width. And it's very thin. So the idea being that you do have to aim, and it does have a projectile time of 4 meters per second. and it can only travel up to 8 meters away. So it is a fairly close range ability. If I go over here, you can have a quick look. The 8 meter range would probably be maybe around here-ish, essentially. There. So yeah, fairly close range, but still something you're going to have to be aiming. I'm probably, now that I've actually looked at it, I would definitely be considering 12 meters as a bit of an alternative. I think this would be also fine. But let's actually talk about what the Laserblade does. Well, she swings it twice per second, so once every half a second, which is nearly double the speed that Reinhardt is swinging here. And upon impact, it will do an immediate 30 damage to the enemy, and then apply 1 stack of bleed to the enemy as well, which is going to be quite big in this character's kit. Bleeding will do 40 additional damage over 2 seconds, so you can see why it makes sense for her to only do 30 damage on the initial hit. Because, well, over the next 2 seconds, an additional 40 damage is going to be dealt. Not to mention it's a fast attack speed. There is a cap. You can only have 3 stacks of bleed applied to an enemy at one time, and if you reapply a bleed to an enemy who already has a bleed stack on them, then it will just refresh the oldest one's duration. Now, it's worth noting, some people may think, or may have done the maths, and thought, okay, so it could only possibly have got up to 4 stacks of bleed at the same time. Why put a cap on it at 3? Why not put a cap on it at 4? And the reason I did this was for thresholds. If you presume that Slicer immediately hits you with an attack, the idea being that it's quite a fast-moving projectile, like this, boom, that will be point 0, as I call it. That's the first point of impact when you first deal damage, and that's when I start the time to kill timer. The next attack will occur half of a second later, and in that half a second, you will have done 30 damage to them, which, so 30 damage, and then you'll have done 10 damage in bleed, because that's 25% of the total damage. So you're up to 40 damage, then you hit again. So this is half of a second after attacking someone. You've now hit them a second time. Well, that's going to up the damage to 70. And then by the time that you've got your third attack, well, you've got 2 stacks of bleed, so that's going to do 20 additional damage. Over that half a second, so you're now going from 70 to 90, and by 1 second of attacking someone, you will now have done 120 total damage to them. So 120 damage per second. This means that over 2 seconds, you will have killed the 225 health heroes, and just over 2 seconds, barely just over 2 seconds, because 3 stacks of bleed does, 30 damage every half a second. That's quite a lot. You will, and in just over 2 seconds, you will have killed a 250 health hero. The reason that the 3 stack is important as opposed to 4 stacks of bleed is because if you had 4 stacks of bleed in, this character would kill 225 health heroes and 250 health heroes at the same time. If I've done my math wrong here, then I apologise. Now, it was quite difficult to say, and it's going to depend on implementation. Some people might think that 2-second time to kill is a little bit on the slow side, but Symmetra actually has quite a similar time to kill, and that's because Symmetra's damage obviously builds up over time. So if I get a soldier up, the standard health hero, we can roughly do 0, 1, 2, and 2 and a bit, right? So what's the difference? Why is this okay? But then if we consider like a soldier, for example, shooting someone, and we get, mostly headshots, we have quite a quick kill time, much quicker than Sim. Well, it's because Sim's much easier to hit, isn't it? So it's going to depend on implementation. Right now, I envision Laserblade being relatively easy to land shots with. You are going to be quite close to people, and the projectile itself at the moment is 1 meter in width, which isn't huge. It's not massively massive, but it's not ridiculously difficult. And so I wanted the time to kill to be a little bit slower, otherwise it would feel a little bit unfair on the skill expression. If you wanted to make it much more skill-based and harder to land shots, then yeah, maybe you'd need to up the damage numbers a little bit. Bear in mind, I have no access to test any of this stuff, so my numbers and my theory might not quite work out. But let's just continue. It's more about putting forward a cool idea than actually getting all of these numbers correct. So her right click alternate fire, or second ability, is called Evasive Subroutine. Essentially, you activate a stealth program allowing you to become invisible and move faster for a short duration. Let's get into the exact numbers. So I actually imagined this as a cleanse ability as well. So when you first use it, it will cleanse you of all afflictions. So Widow Mine, and you, if you've got bleeds on you from Junker Queen, if you've got poison on you, I've already said poison. I can't think of too many, to be honest, that aren't just crowd control. But she can cleanse herself of those things. Now, it's worth noting, she can't use this ability whilst stunned. So if you do land an Earth Shatter on her, as an example, or a Sleep Dart, she can't just use this ability to escape it. She is still stuck within the area. Think of it as similarly to Zuzu Charm on Kiriko. If you get stunned, you can't just Zuzu Charm yourself out of the stun, can you? But if you've got a poison on you, you can use it whilst you're poisoned. And it will give a brief, half a second of immunity, I would guess, so you can use it to technically just dodge Earth Shatters entirely. And before anyone says that's ridiculous, Sombra for the longest time has been able to dodge Earth Shatters by teleporting into them, just by using the moment, and Reaper can teleport into them. There's a whole bunch of nonsense teleport stuff like that, so I personally think that this is not really ridiculous. But yes, she becomes invisible for 4 seconds, and she moves 30% faster. The reason I decided 30% faster is because it's half as fast as Sombra, and Sombra can only use stealth out of combat, whereas this can be used in combat. It's also worth noting, of course, that there's other abilities to come which will start to make this add up a bit more. Now, the interesting part of this ability is it has a 12-second cooldown and only lasts 4 seconds, so it's not anywhere near the level of stealth that Sombra has access to. But when you know you're about to engage, let's say, I see this guy, I can stealth up 1, 2, 3, 4, and now I'm ready in range to attack, right? The idea being that it helps you to engage or disengage, but it's not really a permanent version of stealth. However, this does have an interesting facet to it, and I like this, but I can understand if this just gets removed, because I don't know how easy it is to balance. But if you kill a foe, the ability will refresh its cooldown. I'm a big fan of Genji being able to dash through someone, and then, dash again, and then just be able to keep dashing. I think it's such a nice expression of skill. And whilst I do think Evasive Subroutine, being able to re-enter stealth isn't as much of an expression of skill as, killing someone, dashing through them, killing someone else and then dashing through them, It's still a cool idea in my opinion, so that's how Evasive Subroutine works. The first ability, which I've called Ability 1, is Execution Protocol. So this is what she's going to be using when she actually wants to kill someone. You see, most characters in Overwatch, or most DPS, I've noticed, have what I would like to call the kill ability. Most of the time, you're just shooting stuff. That's your way of killing people. But as soon as you think, oh, I've got a chance to kill this guy, out comes what I like to call the killing ability. Genji's is, what's it called? That thing, Ventures is the drill forwards. I guess that's a movement as well, but you do use it to kill, kill. Tracer doesn't have one, I guess. Torbjorn is when he goes overdrive. Sim doesn't have one. I guess not everyone has one, actually. Virus on Sombra, Helix Rockets on Soldier, Sojourn. I guess it's either the Rail, but it could also be Disruptor. I'd probably say it's the Rail, but I don't really know, but you get the idea. There's a lot of execution abilities that tend to be used when you really want to kill someone. Bastion's is actually, I think, this thing, not his turret form. I think turret form is much more used, well, whatever this form is called, is much more used for pressure than actually, you know, I want to kill someone. Obviously, you do use it when you want to kill someone, but I just think it's slightly different. The idea of what I call the killing ability is that it's an instant addition to damage, whereas the turret is not an instant addition to damage. It's a, I will get damage in a moment. So, yeah. So, Executioner Protocol gives you a buff for 4 seconds, and for these 4 seconds, you move 30% faster. This will be usable whilst you're in your Evasion Protocol, or Subroutine, which means that you can get the full 60% speed that Sombra gets for 4 seconds if you use them both at the same time. And it says that your next attack will dash you forwards 8 meters. I'll up it to 12 meters if the primary fire is increased range to 12 meters. But essentially, as opposed to you shooting your next shot, you will dash into your next attack and swing your blades as a melee attack. On the first hero that you collide with, an enemy hero I suppose, you do 80 damage instantly to them and apply 3 stacks of bleed into them instantly, which means that you'll start doing 30 damage per second, or per half a second, so 60 damage per second from your bleed from the get-go. This ability on its own will do 200 damage over 2 seconds, with 80 being instantly, and then an additional 120 being dealt over 2 seconds. I think that this is a little bit bigger, more damage than the other abilities, but I think there's a few disadvantages. So whereas something like Helix Rocket here has basically no risk and does 125 damage, because obviously I can ping this from range without actually any sort of risk. Execution Protocol has a bit of a different thing. The first thing is, it's a bit harder to hit because you have to personally run yourself into battle and then dash at an enemy. This is a little bit harder in my opinion than just from a distance just popping like that. It's also much higher risk. You are putting yourself directly in front of the enemy team, and once you attack them, you will immediately exit stealth. I probably should have mentioned this, but if you attack whilst in stealth, you come out of stealth. I think that's a fair system. But yeah. Now, the other thing is you only do 80 damage instantly, and then a 120 damage is dealt over 2 seconds. Which sounds like a bit, but you've got to remember that gives your supports, your tanks, and everyone else a lot of time to heal you should you follow up with basically nothing else. And the time to kill, I think, is down by about 1 second total. So you've still got a fairly standard-ish time to kill, I would say. Now, if there was an ability which does too much damage, I would say this is probably it. But you've got to remember that in 1.5 seconds, if she hits 3 hits, then she can apply 3 stacks of bleeding fairly easily anyway. If I was going to nerf this ability, just because maybe it is doing a bit too much on its own, I would say instead of applying 3 stacks of bleeding straight away, it just applies 1 stack of bleeding, but still does 80 damage instantly, which puts you 50 damage up from just doing a normal melee attack. But yeah, and then the final thing to note about it, I think is a big deal, is it's a 12-second cooldown. Helix Rocket here is a 6-second cooldown, and it's, you know, doing about 125 damage instantly. So, you know, I think it's, you know, you got to at least give it a little bit of leeway in that regard. And even if we start getting the ones out from like Echo, you know, they do quite a lot of damage, this little right click, and she has another one as well, but if we just do the right clicks, that's probably the more accurate one. That is a lot of damage to take, and there is the only punishment being a small delay on it, really. Whereas this doesn't hit as hard, I don't think. Oh, actually, it does probably hit about as hard. But you've got to go into melee range, much more vulnerable for yourself. Once again, I don't have access to testing. If you're going to change it so that it only does 1 stack of bleeding, then reduce the cooldown to, I would say, 8 seconds instead of 12. At least that way it doesn't feel quite so horrifically long. Her second ability is going to be the Disengagement Protocol. Disengagement Protocol is quite simple. You essentially you kick an enemy that's close to you. So if there's no one close to you, then you just backflip backwards 15 meters. And if there is someone close to you, you kick them as you disengage and backflip backwards 15 meters. The idea being that it's a disengagement ability. It's fairly simple. It's used if you've dashed yourself in and you want to now get out. You can kick off that guy. It knocks them back 5 meters, which is only from here to here. I don't want it to be a big knockback. And then you go back all the way 15 meters, so I would be back here now. It helps to get Slicer out of the danger zone. And finally, Slicer's ultimate ability is going to be called Deletion. I immediately called it Slice, by the way. That was the original ability name, should I say. But what does Deletion do? Well, her phrase will be sliced to ribbons. That's her phrase, whatever country you would like her to be from. I'm not really too fussed. I haven't really thought that much about it. I know roughly her lore, but I don't know where she's from. You can kind of just say she's from anywhere you would like. It doesn't really make any difference to me, at least. I'll let Blizzard deal with the details if they decide to take her. But essentially, you charge up for 2 seconds. So the idea is for 1, or 0, 1, 2, ding, and on 2. That's the time it takes to charge up. So the charge up is important because without it, you could just use this in a 1v1 and win pretty much any 1v1. Obviously, if you ult in a 1v1 against another DPS, you're kind of expected to win. But I don't find it particularly fun when people solo ult other people, so I don't want to promote that. So there is a 2-second cast time. You can move as normal whilst you're doing this 2-second cast time. There is no you can't use abilities, you can't shoot, but you can move left and right. And when you fire it, you fire a 4-meter wide projectile from your blade. So you essentially swing both blades at the same time. Imagine it as like a cross pattern, because she has both her arms are obviously curved blades. Imagine them crossed, and then she swings them both outwards, unleashing essentially that, but imagine one in the opposite way as well, so it makes a cross and traveling forwards. It's a 4-meter wide slice. Now, the way that I like to envision this is that Reinhardt's shield, as you can see, is 6 meters. So imagine just taking off, the left part of Reinhardt's shield there, and you've got how wide the projectile is. And she can aim it wherever she wants. The projectile travels at 10 meters per second, and it will pass through all walls and barriers, doing 130 true damage to any foe struck, and any foe struck is also afflicted with 3 stacks of bleeding, which is 120 damage over 2 seconds. So, what's the point of this? Also, the ult cost is 1750. I figured this character had a similar role as Tracer as a backline harassment DPS unit. And so I figured, the ult should charge fairly quickly. So, what's the deal with this ult? Well, the first unique, other than all of the unique parts, it is just a fire strike. Except it also goes through walls. So as you can see, if Fire Strike hits that wall, it doesn't go through. You can shoot through walls with Slicer's Deletion. The second thing, in the same way as Reinhardt's Barrier, and, Sim's Barrier, and any barrier at all, this will pass straight through it. So if Rein is like this and Slicer ults, it will hit him and damage him. 100, he takes the damage. And this projectile goes through every target hit, so if the enemy team is all stacked up, this will severely punish that by doing 130 true damage to everybody and 120 additional damage over 2 seconds to everybody. So, what's the deal? Well, every character with 250 health is dead. They will be dead after 2 seconds if they get hit by this ultimate. Well, I think that's fair, because ultimately the projectile isn't incredibly fast. You can get out of its way, and you don't have to line up your entire team for it. Obviously, it's also an ultimate, and you do have a good 2 seconds to receive healing before you die. Now, if this is unfair and people don't like it, then I would say, okay, reduce the true damage from 130 to 100 instead. That way, it doesn't kill anybody just by hitting them. Even characters like Hanzo, even 225 hit point heroes like Hanzo, Sombra, Mercy, Kiriko, Moira, they will essentially, after 2 seconds, if they don't heal up at all, they will still be left with 5 health. I think I think 130 is fine, to be honest, because it's an ultimate. I mean, if you think Junkrat's Riptire instantly kills you, you know, it's like, and that's totally fine. Although there is a bit more, you know, ability to shoot the tire, I suppose. But, you know, Genji does a stupid amount of damage with his ult. Can't really call Cassidy's ult there, but you get the point. Ults do a lot of damage in general. If you get stuck by a pulse bomb, you're just dead. Pharah's ult does do a lot of damage, but I guess you could see a bit of counterplay. It would depend on how easy the counterplay is to do with this ability. But I think you can largely avoid it in the same way that you can generally avoid fire strikes. Not always, but you can generally not get hit by them. Now, of course, I would expect that if you're going to ult with this ult, you should be at least hitting 2 people, because obviously you're probably picking people that are in positions where they can't dodge it as easily, or where they've lined up a little bit, and, you know, they're not going to be focused entirely on your ultimate. So the main feature that I like is the true damage. 130 true damage is the number I'm currently going with, but obviously everything's subject to change. And the thing I like about true damage is it is going to work exactly how true damage works in other games. For anyone who doesn't know exactly what I'm talking about, the idea being that it says it does 130 damage, it does 130 damage. That means Reinhardt, you see I have armor here. Normally that would reduce the damage by, is it 10 or 5? I literally don't remember anymore. But it does not reduce it at all. You still take 130 damage. Orisa goes, nope, I don't want to take damage at all. Oh well. I don't remember asking, says Slicer. You still take 130 damage. You don't, I mean, thanks internet. You don't reduce damage with that at all. The same goes with Mauga. Yep. Now, what does count? Well, if you get over health, so if I use this as Ramatra, of course, your over health is your additional max health is going to take the damage before you do. Another thing is if you have a barrier of some kind. So, for example, Lucio's ult, of course, will block the damage as normal. True damage is only avoiding damage reduction. It does not just avoid, you know, additional health that your characters may have. It is... Whether this ability is protectable, I've currently got it that it's unblockable. And by unblockable, I mean you can't protect against it. So that would mean that Suzu Charm, for example, you wouldn't protect against it because, well, it's unblockable. The same would be for Lifeweaver's Pull. You can tell how often I play Lifeweaver. But technically that would block an attack, and, well, you can't block it. So I think I would actually, just as a brief change, because I did say this, is that I don't think it should be it should be blockable, but not by barriers. It will pass through barriers as expected. But, you know, things like Suzu Charm, things like Lifeweaver's Pull, those will both completely negate the damage as expected. Mercy Res, which makes, you know, the resed person immune. They're all safe. Anyone with immunities, and Yata, another one on his ult. Yeah, okay, yeah, it was a bit silly. It also, just in case anyone's wondering, would be completely not lethal in the what's this thing called? The lamp. The lamp will completely keep you safe. You can't die if you have lamp. Because lamp prevents death. It doesn't reduce damage. Well, actually, I don't know. Maybe it does reduce damage. But I think that lamp should protect against it. So yeah, that's the general gist of the ultimate. Let me know if you think it's too strong. I don't really know. Obviously, I would need to test it out and have any degree of being able to test this stuff out would, of course, give me a bit more knowledge, and I might realize the error of my ways. But yeah, that's going to be Slicer. So the idea of Slicer as a playstyle is that you're sort of a backline harassment unit. You play this similar to Tracer, where you're taking off angles and harassing the backline, trying to delete the DPS units. In general, your damage is slow, and you do quite low amounts of damage overall. So ultimately, you going for the tank on Slicer is not the play. You shouldn't really be attempting to kill their frontline. You should be attempting to outmaneuver their frontline, and Slicer has quite a lot of tools to do that. Execution Protocol and Evasive Subroutine both give you huge amounts of movement speed, and with Evasive Subroutine giving you stealth as well, you're actually quite safe and have quite a lot of protection against being caught initially. Disengagement Protocol gives you a nice option to make distance quickly if you do get caught out. And with the evasion subroutine having its cooldown refreshed on kill, I think the playstyle is to ambush them with an execution protocol and attempt to quickly finish them off with a few basic attacks. And once they are dead, you want to quickly go back into stealth and speed off somewhere else before anyone catches you. Your ult is a little bit anti to that playstyle, so I think that's my only concern with this ultimate. I did like the idea of an ultimate that goes through the map, which is why I kind of came up with this. But, so that's why I did it, but I do admit that, you know, Tracer has Pulse Bomb, which suits her playstyle perfectly. Whereas this ultimate is much more about being grouped up and much more about pressuring the entire team as opposed to just assassinating singular players. But I still think it's just too cool of an ultimate not for me not to at least put forward as the suggestion. And I could totally see if Blizzard actually takes this concept, which, let's be real, they're not. But if they did, I could actually see a world where they change her ultimate and use the ultimate on someone else, but keep the rest of Slicer's kit. But yeah, that's Slicer. I'm not a DPS player, so feel free to tell me that I've made the least fun character ever. But I hope that you guys enjoyed it. If you've got any opinions on Slicer and you think that she's good, if you think she's bad, if you think that she wouldn't be fun, if you think she's not healthy for the game, then I would actually love to know, because as I said in my previous video, this is a learning experience for me. I want to learn how to design games and design characters, and I love hero-based abilities and classes. How am I supposed to learn what players like if I don't put forward my ideas and see, do you guys like them? Honestly, it's a principle that more game developers should live by. You know, let's look at the characters and we'll tell you if they're good or not, right? We're the people playing the game, we're the ones that would know. As far as I can tell, I think this character would be cool. I like the idea of a stealth character that's very close range focused, that's very backline harassment focused. Now, this is coming from someone who plays support, and I admit, as a support, I really don't like dealing with Sombras, I don't like dealing with Tracers in particular, or Genjis, because they do a lot of damage very quickly, and it does often feel like if no one comes to help you, then, you know, you're a bit in a disadvantaged position. But I still think that this is a fun hero idea, and that's all I've really got for it. So I hope you guys do tell me your thoughts, and I hope that this is a cool idea. And obviously, secretly, I hope that if Blizzard picks it up, I will be like, oh my goodness, this is, you know, that would be the dream, wouldn't it? Because that's what I want to do. I want to design things. I want to be a games designer. That's genuinely my goal in life. Maybe I'm not very good right now. But, you know, with your help and with, you know, just practice, I'm sure maybe I'll get better. But yeah, honestly, feedback is everything. Whether it's good, if you hate it, I'm not going to be upset if you say I think this is a crap design. Okay, let me be totally honest. That would hurt a little bit because, you know, I would like to think that the thing I would like to do I'm actually somewhat decent at. But I am not going to be that upset if you tell me you think this is a shit character and that I need to reconsider what I'm making. Because that would at least give me some ideas as to, well, I'm clearly doing something wrong. And then I would know to start figuring, you know, fixing things. So yeah, anyway, thank you very much for watching. Sorry about the Twitch stream getting skipped on Friday. I'm going to try and keep all of this videos and stuff separate from the Twitch streams. I don't really like mentioning the Twitch on my YouTube videos, and I don't really like mentioning the YouTube videos on my Twitch, because I feel like, well, when I'm making YouTube videos, you've clicked this video to look at a hero concept, and I'm, you know, talking about my Twitch. And then I don't like when I'm, you know, streaming on Twitch, well, you've watched my stream to, you know, have a chill vibe gameplay session where I just play video games, and, you know, I'm talking about, you know, what YouTube videos I'm going to be making. You know, it's just not, it's not. So, I'm not going to be mentioning the Twitch anymore at all. But the general concept is, if I miss a Twitch session, I will probably make a YouTube video to compensate. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. I'm sorry, I will be doing chapters for this video, the hope being that you can, largely speaking, skip the parts that don't interest you. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evenings, and the rest of your lives, for that matter. And enjoy gaming, because gaming is fun, and you never know when your favourite games are going to be gone forever. Adios. I didn't end the stream.